All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've just gotten official news on, of course, Zani's kit, but also, alongside that, her weapon. And today what I wanted to do was basically get into just how valuable this weapon is for, of course, Zani, potentially other members of the roster, and, of course, start getting into some potential alternatives that are on the roster as well, just in case you might have them, to indicate, whether or not this weapon is worth pulling on your account if you are trying to pull for Zani. And so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at it and get ourselves started. Because this one, ladies and gentlemen, it does have some pretty character-specific effects. All right, folks, if you're looking to spend some money for Wuwa's anniversary and maybe secure Zani or her weapon or any of those other rerun banners, you'd probably like to save some cash. LD Shop is a fantastic way of doing that, and I'll show you exactly why. LDshop.gg gives you access to huge discounts on pretty much anything you can buy in a ton of games. But let's click on Wuwa for now. The monthly pass? Usually it's $5 dues, but on LD Shop, it'll be much less. What a deal! To claim one of these discounts, just select the item you're looking for and click Top Up to submit your payment. You'll need your Kuro linked account email, password, and username. This might seem a bit off, but remember that LD Shop already works with sensitive account information with their emulator, LD Player, so you can trust them for their services. They also have excellent reviews on Trustpilot. If you created an account with Gmail or Facebook, use the directions in the top up menu to link your account to an email. After finalizing your payment info, wait a couple of minutes and your items will be on your account. New users can get a 10% discount and an additional 5% using my sponsored link, and first-time top-up bonuses are available as well. That means you can get some big discounts. Spending $80 or more will net you a VIP membership, which can get you a free 30-day Lunite subscription. So try LD Shop today. All right, so we're going to be seeing it over here on the Twitter page. I'm just going to go ahead and actually just pop open what it actually looks like. So we're going to see over here, it's got like that whole clock motif and everything. We got the, it is a gauntlet, so do keep that in mind when it comes to the other options. And when it comes to its base stats, the base stats are actually going to be really, really important and actually really, really, really good for one reason. It has really high base attack and it also has critical damage. And this is the thing. Critical damage is a really, really important stat for Zani in particular because Zani basically really wants to use the Eternal Radiance Sonata set. And one thing we know about the Eternal Radiance Sonata set is that, well, it provides crit rate by itself. It provides actually a whopping 20% as long as enemies have Spectral Frazzle on them. And Zani has a unique interaction in her kit where when allies inflict Spectral Frazzle on enemies, it gets converted to Helical Embers, which is a different debuff, and deals the Spectral Frazzle damage immediately. And Helical Embers basically function as Spectral Frazzle for the purposes of the set. And so you'll be able to very easily activate the full set's bonus if you do have a Spectral Frazzle applier on her team. And so that's going to be how it works over here. And so because of that, with all of that built-in crit, well, it's really nice to have a crit damage weapon. One thing that Phoebe users struggle with, in my opinion, is the fact that her weapon actually gives crit rate, a whopping 36% crit rate, and so it becomes incredibly easy to overcap on crit unless you're intentionally using pieces like this one that don't have crit rate on them. Otherwise, with the set's effect, you saw that I'm at 94% crit. With Shorekeeper, I'm overcapping, and that's when I'm missing one crit damage or one crit rate roll. And so sometimes if I'm using Shorekeeper, I use two pieces that don't have crit rate, and I still reach 100%. And so that's also while using a crit damage forecast. And when it comes to Zani, you're likely going to want to run a crit damage forecast and then double crit on every piece. And with that crit damage weapon, well, ladies and gentlemen, you should be easily able to reach around 320, maybe even 330% critical damage, while also having close to 100% crit rate. So yeah, having a crit damage weapon over here while using the Spectral Frazzle set is really, really, really important and really, really, really cool because you're going to be able to reach damage numbers that, honestly, not a lot of other units on the roster are going to be able to match. The only other units, in my opinion, that are going to be able to match this are other Spectral Frazzle set users like Spectral Rover. For Spectral Rover, if you're trying to really optimize their damage, you run the same Spectral Frazzle set, and sometimes you even run a weapon like Blazing Brilliance as well. And that actually gives you some good bonuses. So yeah, that's going to be the base stats on this weapon and how they're going to work. Let's go ahead and dive into some of its special effects. And this is where stuff is going to be kind of important. So the weapon skill is going to be called Darkness Breaker. Synchronization ranks 1 through 5. We're only going to be looking at and focusing on 1 for now because otherwise you're just a big whale. It's going to increase attack by 12%, in my opinion, having an increase of attack by 12% isn't like the best thing ever because I'm going to be honest, a general attribute damage bonus is typically a lot more reliable. For kits, you can basically get a 12% attack roll just from like rolling it on a piece, but you can't get a general attribute damage bonus on an Echo in basically any circumstance. And so it's usually better to have a buff like this because this essentially gives you a 12% buff to every single damage type that you have. Basic, heavy, resonance skill, resonance liberation, it gives the damage buff to all of those types. While the attack buff, right, it's just something you can roll on an Echo. And so having this is like getting 4 of those damage rolls in like one stat, while attack, again, you can just roll it on an Echo, like, and it's not as valuable, if we're frankly being honest. So that's going to be the whole situation going on over there for that initial stat. Now let's get into the weapon effect itself. Casting a basic attack grants the following effects. The damage dealt ignores 8% of the target's defense and also amplifies spectral frazzle damage dealt by 50%. And you might be thinking, wait, I read through Zani's kit. And I saw that her most damaging state, Scorching Light, it's considered heavy attack damage and spectral frazzle damage. And so are you going to have to like do some weird, dumb basic attacks to be able to like actually activate this? And the answer is no. That's because in her state, basic attacks are actually replaced with these heavy slashes. And casting a basic attack is what's required to fulfill the requirements of this effect. And so essentially, using the basic attacks in this enhanced state are going to give you all of the buffs while dealing heavy attack damage. And this is the thing. It's actually very similar to how another weapon in this game works. And this is also another weapon that might be somewhat useful on Zani. And that's actually going to be Rosia's signature, Tragic Comedy. Incredible that this weapon that we thought was basically completely useless on everybody that wasn't Rosia is actually going to have a little bit of use cases on Zani herself. Every time a basic attack or intro skill is cast, heavy attack damage bonus increases by 48%. And this is the thing, guys. Every single one of these slashes that Zani is doing counts as casting a basic attack. And so the duration is not an issue because each of these is considered a cast. And so, if you do have Rosia's weapon, it actually is going to be somewhat transferable over to Zani. You're not going to have as much damage amp as Zani's, because she simply has more and she also has the defense ignore, but you still will be able to get a nice 48% boost to the heavy attack damage stat. Because again, each of these attacks, they count as casting a basic in her state. So you will be able to get the buffs if you do have this weapon. Unfortunately, because this weapon was only usable on Rosia at the time of release, I don't think a lot of people actually pulled it, because Rosia is a sub DPS, and getting a weapon to buff a sub DPS's damage is typically not the best use of resources on your account and overall team performance. But if you do have it, it's a big W. And if you do want to do something as weird as like pull Rosia's weapon in phase 2 after you pull Zani but not Zani's weapon, you could do that. But if you're looking for Zani's performance, it's just going to be better to get hers, because a 50% damage amp on Zani's main damage source is going to be better than a 48% heavy attack damage bonus, and you get a nice defense ignore as well. However, this kind of leads us into the elephant in the room when it comes to how this weapon actually works. And I'm going to be honest with you. This thing, Blazing Justice, is one of the most, if not the most, specific weapon in the game. I genuinely have absolutely no idea who can even slightly leverage from this at all other than Zani. It has nice base stats, rest assured, right? You got the 587 attack and then the crit damage of 48.6%. I think it's a pretty decent stat stick, and you have a nice 12% attack damage bonus, probably be better as a damage bonus, but everything else in here is like, I guess you get the defense ignore, but the real slice of the pie, which is the 50% damage amp on Zani's main source of damage, which will be amped by this, that's kind of not going to work on any other character in the game. You could think about hypothetically like buffing passive spectral frazzle damage by like putting it on a gauntlet user while having like Confession Phoebe on the team, but like who are you going to use with Confession Phoebe if it's not Zani? Like, you got Zhang, like, hell no, not Zhang Li. Rosia herself is said that's a disaster. What else we got over here? Jian Xin, if you want, like, the shielding. But Yan Wu is a complete comedian in basically every team that's not, like, a budget free-to-play Jinsei one. And Yohu, I mean, yeah, maybe if you want to use her coordinated attack buffing on nobody, so basically not having an outro skill on your healer, it's a bit of a disaster just in terms of its overall usability. This is probably one of the main weapons in the game where it's kind of only usable on the wielder of the signature. It probably actually takes the cake as the most specific weapon or the most specific signature in the game. I used to think that that belonged to Rosia, but Rosia's signature is actually pretty decent on Zani, and Zani's signature is complete dog shit. It's completely dog shit on Rosia, but you still, I mean, I guess you'll still be able to get the 8% defense ignore and the 12% attack, but you won't be able to get the actual meaningful part of the buff. Oh, bro, forgot to count Ling Yang? Okay, yeah, no, this is gonna suck. I mean, I guess Ling Yang will get the 8% defense ignore as well as the 12% attack, but it's just, hopefully you guys are seeing where a lot of the struggle is going to be when it comes to actually leveraging this weapon as a whole. And so with that, we've talked about this weapon. We've talked about its use cases. Unfortunately, I would have loved to dive into how useful it would have been on other units, but I'm going to be entirely 1,000,000% real with you here. It is kind of just an arguably worse option than pretty much every other one in the game on other units. Unless you're using it as a stat stick, and unless you're maybe using it on Ling Yang. I guess now that I think about it, Rosia's could hypothetically be worse if the unit doesn't use heavy attacks, because then all you get is a 12% damage bonus. And the thing is, right, I guess it is technically better than Rosia's on a good number of characters, because simply from using a basic attack, you'll be able to get a 6-second defense ignore. Yeah, using one basic attack will give you a 6-second 8% defense ignore. And so now that I think about it, Zani's signature is actually not as specific. Let me actually take it back. Now that I think about it a bit more, Zani's signature should actually be better than Rosia's on pretty much every user in the game, as long as the user doesn't use heavy attacks, because it's not hard to activate this 8% defense ignore. You simply use one basic attack and you can get it for 6 seconds, versus Rosia's, which is one basic attack to get the heavy attack damage buff for 3 seconds. And it's undeniable that a defense ignore is actually a lot more usable or a lot more impressive than a 48% heavy attack damage buff for a character that can't use it. And it's double the duration. It's double the duration. So yeah, it's actually better than Rosia's. Yeah, Rosia's still takes the cake as the most specific one in the game, but thankfully, Tragic Comedy is actually usable on Zani herself. So yeah, I mean, that's that. Zhang Liao can use this one too. As long as you're weaving in a basic attack, yeah, you will be able to use this on Zhang Liao, though I don't really recommend it. So with that, we've taken a look at the weapons. We've taken a look at the second best option. Now let's start talking about, well, all the other ones. And we'll just kind of like go through the list. We'll talk about how they're going to perform on Zani and get right into it. Abyss Surges is over here. It's going to increase ER by 12%, which might be nice for Zani's Liberation if you're failing to meet the ER requirements for that. And when you hit a target with the Resonance skill, increase basic attack damage bonus by 10%. Be real here, Zani doesn't really do basic attack damage bonus, so this is just a pure attack stat stick. It's usable, it's okay if you have no other options, but she's really only benefiting from the ER over here. Everything else that's in here, it's almost non-existent, especially when she's in her liberation state, because she deals heavy attack damage. Next, we got Verity's Handle, Zhang Liao's signature, and this is likely the 5-star gauntlet that most people actually have. And so this one is going to give you a 12% attribute damage bonus, and when you use a liberation, you gain a 48% resonance liberation damage buff for 8 seconds. And the effect is extended by 5. Most people don't need the extension because they kind of just cast their liberation and that's it. Zhang Liao's is typically the most generally beneficial signature in the game because everyone has a liberation and very few characters fully convert their liberation damage into a different type. I think the main one that comes off the top of my head is like Jian, but he's a Broadblade wielder, right? He converts all of his liberation damage to heavy attack. And this is the thing, right? When it comes to Zani, I don't think she actually converts it. So Rekindle, when she activates her state, and then the final move where she summons the gigantic clock, I'm pretty sure this all deals actually liberation damage. And so Zhang Liao will buff the part where she enters Inferno mode, and then Zhang Liao's should also buff the part where when her blaze is lower than 30 and she goes through her entire rotation, she'll be able to cast the Last Stand, which just deals spectral damage. It would have clearly indicated that this deals heavy attack damage if the damage was converted. And so I imagine that this just straight up deals liberation damage on both parts. And so Zhang Liao's signature should actually be a decent option for at least buffing that part. But you will be missing out on, obviously, right, a lot of that damage amp that's going to be happening over here. But I imagine with Zhang Liao's Sig, your Liberation's going to deal more damage than if you had Zani Sig. So that's definitely something to think about. Definitely a decent advantage that it has over the Sig. But do keep in mind that both Rosia's signature and Zhang Liao's signature, well, they have a crit rate substat. And so do keep in mind, right, especially when we just talked about that interaction with Spectral Frazzle and the Spectral Frazzle set, you might overcap on crit really, really, really easily if you're using Zhang Liao's Sig or you're using Rosia's signature, because those are going to give crit rate when Zani, of course, right, is going to be using a set that already gives her 20%. So do keep that in mind when you're thinking about optimizing your Zani or getting the, the most damage out of her as possible. Capping crit rate is really, really, really bad in this game because there's no benefit at all from doing that, especially with a unit like Shorekeeper, who's going to give you 12.5% as well. Next up, we're going to start taking a look at some of the 4-star options, and, yeah, I'm going to be real here. They're not very good. Amity Accord, do not use this. It has a defense secondary main stat. Just do not use this. This is awful. It's not worth it. It's not good. Celestial Spiral. Casting a resonance skill is going to grant you 6 resonance energy and increase attack by 10%. It's okay. It has a decent base attack that's, like, better than other weapons, but, like, yeah, I mean, it's an attack buff over here, and then a secondary attack. It's like, if you got nothing else, go for it. And the thing is, right, using a weapon that has no built-in crit rate or no crit substats at all, or crit stats at all, it's not that bad because you already have the crit rate from the set. So it's like, you could probably still use a crit damage forecast if you're using something like this, but at the end of the day, right, you will want to prefer, and you have plenty of opportunities to pull a 5-star Gauntlet across the anniversary. Gauntlet's number 21D, don't even look at this, it's complete ass. Hollow Mirage is also horrible. Because it's got a really low base attack and then it buffs like defense as well. Like, maybe if you want. Legend of the Drunken Hero, it's okay. It's okay for one reason. Because the helical embers that Zani converts from applying Spectral Frazzle will stack this up. And so she will actually get this stacking attack buff using this Renacita craftable. You could consider using it as like a desperate free-to-play option, but again, right, the gap between 4 and 5-star weapons in this game is pretty big, but you can still use 4-star weapons to clear all the content in the game with no problem at all. Marcato, don't even think about this. The base attack is non-existent, and it's an energy regen substat. And Stoneart is really going to be the last decent option over here, with a pretty low base attack as well, 412. And then when you use a resonance skill, you're going to get a resonance skill damage bonus of 18% for 15 seconds. And this is basically like a bad version of Zhang Liao's signature. I think most people can understand this is just like objectively worse than Zhang Liao's. It has lower base attack, lower crit, but it still has a base attack and crit. And with the Liberation damage bonus, once again, you should still be able to get some use cases out of it. You should be able to get some damage bonuses out of it just from being able to use Rekindle, where it deals damage, and then the Last Stand, which deals damage after you've gone through her Inferno mode rotation. So that's going to be those options and how they're going to go. I would just say probably the best choices, again, are going to be Zhang Liao Sig, then Tragic Comedy as number 2, and then, of course, Zani Signature at number 1, because, well, you can kind of see, like every signature in the game, it's tailor-made for its user. LOL, just pull a 5-star Gauntlet. Yeah, I mean, yep, pulling the 5-star weapon is going to give you the best performance. I don't know any gacha game on the market where pulling a 5-star weapon doesn't give you the best performance. So, now that we've covered the weapon, we've covered its use cases, we've covered its viability on other users, and now we've gotten into, ladies and gentlemen, all the different rankings and how decent it's going to be and what Zani's other weapon options are. Let's get into the Ascension mats and actually leveling it. It's just going to be using the same exact skill mats we've been using since 1.0 and FF Howler cores. So make sure you are farming some of those 1.0 mats or saving up using all of these different boxes. I have a lot of them, so I'm probably not going to have an issue saving up all these boxes so that you can actually get those Howler cores in the long run. Kuro's been giving out a shit ton of these across the events. They've also been giving out a lot of forgery premium supplies too. So hopefully actually building this weapon, if you do pull it, isn't going to be too much of a struggle. So with that, that's going to be our entire overview of Zani's weapon. Let me know what you all think. Hopefully this was helpful and gave you some insight as to whether or not you actually want to pull this thing. Let me know what you all think. Peace.